and welcome to episode 11. I'm joined by Mr. David Gillick, the former Irish athlete. And you've I suppose, a lot of strings to your bow now, but I suppose firstly we'll just welcome you in before we get into all that.
Yeah, no, cheers for having us on. Looking forward to the chat.
Yeah. Well, there's actually so much to kind of dive into, but I'll start off with, I suppose, your childhood. Actually, no, before we get into your childhood, we'll get your three ideal dinner guests. It's come up to Christmas, so I think it's a good thing to do, and obviously with your master chef background, it'd be a good thing to ask, I thought.
Yeah, the three dinner guests, is that including me now, or is it three and me?
Three and you.
Okay.
I could be, and the family as well, but there's three to join you and whoever.
Right.
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive. Oh, dead or alive. Okay, well, I'm going to keep it I'll keep it Irish for this, right? So, Roy Keane, right? I always
said him as well.
Yeah, I always throw Roy Keane in there. I'm just after finishing The Rodfather, so Roddy Collins, throw him in the mix. And again, someone that makes me laugh, Joanne McNally, comedian. So that's
a good
bit of a mix, yeah.
I would have dinner with them as well, to be fair. So I couldn't actually knock that, and obviously Joanne's flying with their podcast.
Absolutely, very funny. And again, when you have the dry wit of Keane and. Yeah, as I said, I just finished The Rodfather, which is a great book. It was a good read, and he's funny as well. So it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah, two football men as well. You have a big football background.
Yeah, I would. As a kid growing up, I would have played a lot of soccer locally with Broadford, you know very well, and then would have just followed it, and. Yeah. I think the days of watching any game, the Irish games, all the teams over in England, stuff like that, I would have followed all that. Then when I lived in England as well, at the time when Sunderland was heavily involved, it was an Irish Premier League club, and you had.
I think Roy was managing then.
Roy came in after you had Quinn, the chairman, then you had Drummondville behind it, a lot of Irish players, and
Mick was there as well.
Mick was there as well, yeah. So all of that, I would have had an interest in that, and then I actually ended up going out with a girl from Sunderland, and I ended up marrying her. So we have a connection to Sunderland. Anytime we go over, I go to a game and all that. And I like going up the north of England because it reminded me a lot of home. They're very similar to Irish people. And then you go to a game and there's a load of Irish and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a big kind of football fan, and to be honest with you, I enjoy all sport. I'd watch anything. I'm that kind of way inclined.
Yeah. I just think obviously the Roy connection comes in obviously there with Sunderland, and obviously the fact that he was arguably our best ever player too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what struck me about Keane, and I know years have passed, and we the World Cup this year, people talk about Saipan and all that kind of rest, and that's when opinion can get a little bit heated, and debates and all that. But I think when I was when you're aspiring to be the best that you can be, when you're aspiring to go to Olympic Games and win medals and represent Ireland at the highest level, I would have read a lot about Roy Keane and followed his journey, and it inspired me, it motivated me because of his attitude, working hard, and his presence on the pitch, and all that sort of stuff would have really resonated for a young lad who's trying to get to the next level. And what I liked one time, I remember reading an article about he wasn't about the celebrity of football, he was just about that hard graft, old school they might say, and that stuff I liked, and that kind of inspired me, and to work hard and just follow your dreams and try and get there.
Yeah, and even today though, people don't, I don't think people appreciate his old school kind of way, because he was going on about the dancing of the Brazilian manager and stuff like that for the World Cup, but that's just the way he is. He just doesn't like it. It doesn't mean that people can't do it, but he's just giving his opinion. But he's still so funny at the same time.
It's the kind of dry core quit, and deadpan in terms of his response and stuff like that, and I kind of as a pundit, I like the way he just cuts through and he says what he thinks. That's what he's there for, and obviously you're going to get different opinions on that reaction, and people debate, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, he is, in terms of punditry, he's box office, and that's what people want to hear, and people will tune in and watch him.
I think that's why people have actually even just turned off RTE to tune into ITV, because he's on it. And then obviously the thing with Souness he had, obviously that blew up as well.
Yeah. But it just shows the way of the world now, it goes everywhere. So something's on TV, but then it can transfer onto all mediums, and then before you know it, it's gone viral, etc.
We had it on TikTok, 1 million views and stuff like that. Just Roy Keane. He's Keane. As you say, he is box office, and people just love to hear what he has to say and want to hear his opinion, whether he's going mad or just in general, if he's just being honest.
Yeah, it's interesting. But like I said, it kind of shows the world that we live in now as well, in terms of, you know, social media and how that plays in terms of, you know, your own kind of profile, and building your own profile. And it's something that I think has worked probably well in his favour, but that all of them, like all of those pundits now, have kind of done well off the back of all that.
Yeah, they
stuff.
kind of became brands out of it.
Brands.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like Vicar Richards and Gary Neville and Carragher and so on. And then when they get together, it is quite funny. It's almost comedy when they get together.
Yeah, of course. And I think that kind of goes to the relaxed presence, and that's sometimes when you look back at TV and how it's evolved, you know, that sort of like analysis, punditry, you know, when it's friends kind of chatting, it comes across like that, and it's relaxed, and you know, people are at ease, whereas maybe years ago it was a little bit more kind of like, you know, question here, question there, question here, a little bit more rigid. And I think that's the way things have evolved, and look, they all have done well, and it's created, you know, they're a show, like they're a show within a show.
Yeah, no, 100%. I suppose we'll bring it back onto you, and I suppose life for you growing up. What was your early days like? I imagine you're not far from here. So.
No, literally the stone's throw. Grew up in Ballantyre, the youngest of four, 2 brothers and sister, and then me. Went to school locally, participated in all local sports, from soccer to GAA to obviously athletics. And I think kind of growing up, like, you follow what your brothers and sisters are doing, and my mum and dad were kind of big into sport, and probably my earliest memory was, you know, watching them participate in sport, and that was from everything from basketball to GA, a bit of tennis from my dad and stuff like that. And I think, you know, it was just the culture in the house was weekends would come, and sure, John, Tony, Eileen, they're all going off and doing various sport, and being the youngest, I'd be just thrown in the car and dragged somewhere. So I think I more or less grew up on the side of a...
Your family were like actually good at sports. Like I hear...
Yeah, they were,
John
yeah.
was very good at GAA. Obviously Tony played with Steadfast.
Yeah.
Won a lot of, you know, things over the years there at the club.
Yeah, they were, in fairness. Like, yeah, kind of sporty or talented kids, you know.
Is that something from the parents then?
Yeah, my mum would have played basketball, was her sport. She would have played at a high, like, she would have represented Ireland, you know, to a high level, and would have played domestically at the highest level in women's basketball. And again, it's kind of like, I can remember going to these games. I can remember going to, you know, the cup finals and stuff like that in Inchicore originally, and then over to Tala with the new arena. You know, John played a lot of soccer, played a lot of GA as well. I can remember going and watching him. Tony, as you said, my sister played a lot of basketball, and obviously she probably was the one who excelled in athletics, more so than my brothers, but we all did athletics. And I think being the youngest, you kind of, like I said, you kind of follow suit. And that's where I kind of got into the various kind of sports. But again, I think in the area around Ballantyre, we were very, very lucky. Like, we had a load of green space, the parks, loads of pitches, loads of clubs, loads of good kind of volunteers who are helping kids and coaching kids in the area. So in terms of, like, you know, amenities, in terms of that kind of outlet for various sports, it was there. And I think that was something. Again, local school, Our Lady's Ballantyre, good teachers that were interested in sport. And, you know, it was Olive Horgan, who was my teacher, who was into athletics. And it was a Cumna Bun School, which is the primary school sports in Dublin. She was the one who kind of got us to go to them. And again, I think, you know, when you look at the education system and PE and all that, it tends to be driven by a teacher. So if you have a teacher that's interested in a certain sport, the school then tends to kind of be known for that sport because there's an interest there. And again, you go back to that kind of volunteer side of it, that they're probably not getting paid to do the extracurricular activities. But in Our Lady's Ballantyre, we played Gaelic, but she was obviously into athletics. So not every school is going to kind of have that. And again, you could say I was lucky, but then it had a knock-on effect with Dundrumset Dublin Athletic Club, which was, again, with Liz and Eddie McDonough on our doorstep. So one kind of fed the other. So a bit of talent there. And all the kids kind of around the area, whether it was Gaelic, soccer, we all used to participate in athletics. We used to go down to the old hall in BCS in Ballantyre Community School and probably kick football for an hour before the athletics would start because you were in the hall. And I know a lot of kids just went down to kick the football, never mind the running. But it was fun, and, you know, at the end of the day, you kind of figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. And so I think growing up, it was a happy kind of time to grow up. I think, you know, like I said, there was lots to do around the area. And I'm not saying like Dundrum Town Centre, stuff like that, but it was back in the day where it was the park. You'd go into the park and you'd spend hours in Marley Park doing all sorts, climbing trees, all that kind of good stuff, you know, up Tick Knock and all that as well. So very lucky, very happy. and like good mates as well. All went to similar schools. Then I went down to St. Benilda's in Kilmacud, again, like heavily into sport, from soccer to Gaelic to cross country running. Again, some great teachers down there that would have coached us, would have all kind of got us into those various sports, opportunities to participate in all those sports. And I think that's the greatest thing when I look back, was I had the opportunity to try different things. Even from like a long-term athletic development standpoint, I was trying different sports. I was good at a few, maybe not so, but years I would have done probably definitely 3-4 sports. And then you kind of figure out, well, which one am I kind of doing well in, which one do I enjoy doing?
How was that, I suppose, that development of slowly narrowing down?
Yeah, probably got to, like, you know, it's funny because I was always fast. So I'd grown up fast in my class, like I won sports day and all that crack. And then I probably maybe didn't develop as kind of quick as some other lads. So suddenly you're going from one of the tallest in the class to like, geez, and now I'm in the middle and other lads are just rocketing, you know.
So you took a while to stretch then. Obviously.
Yeah, I did. And then
you're not small now, obviously.
No, I'm 6'2" and a half. Yeah. So I did kind of grow a little bit. But I think what happened was you go from like winning, and then I wasn't winning. So when I was like 13, 14, even 15, I wasn't winning anything on the track. But I was doing well playing Gaelic, and I was playing soccer as well. And then kind of when I got to like 16 to 17, you know, I probably wasn't getting my game as regularly playing soccer. I was still playing a lot of Gaelic and I was doing well at that. But then running suddenly came back and I began kind of really making progress. And that 5th year in school, I won an All-Ireland for St. Benilda's. And again, you're kind of going, oh, that's a step. You know, that's a big step. And then it was kind of like, well, you know, I wasn't really doing that well at soccer. I was still enjoying it and I was playing with my mates, but I wasn't in the starting 11, let's say, for my club. So suddenly you kind of go, well, I'm doing well at this and doing well at that. So then that dropped off. And then I played Gaelic up until I was 19. And running was really kind of going well. I was beginning to make inroads there and getting faster. And then the big change was I went to Jamaica for the World Junior Championships in athletics. I went as part of a relay team and that just blew my mind. That was just a game changer. That experience, you know, even getting the kit to go into Jamaica, spending like 2 to 3 weeks over there, you know, racing in a stadium, watching Usain Bolt, like 40,000 people, all that was just
Was he huge then or was he just becoming...
This was his first, so he was, juniors is like under 20. Or at the time, sorry, that's wrong. It was actually under 19s, I think it was. They've changed it since. But he was only like 16. So he was like 2 years younger than a lot of the athletes he was competing against. And he just annihilated everyone over 200 metres. And that was like the start of the like kind of Usain Bolt and who he was and this talent that people kind of were talking about in Jamaica as a teenager. But this was the world kind of seeing him for the first time at a World Juniors, and he just like he danced on everyone. It was amazing, and there was 40,000 people going bonkers in the stadium. It was his home country, and I can remember being there going like, "Wow, this is unreal." I was like, "I want to be like him," and that was when I decided, well, if I want to be like him or really kind of compete on an individual basis, I need to. I need to pack in the other sport and concentrate on it. And that's what I did. I came home and this was like, I think it was 2001. And I was like, right, I'm going to be an athlete. And that's kind of it. And it was hard giving up the Gaelic. Like I finished school by this stage, so I wasn't playing for the school. So that was kind of one element gone. But then my club as well, I was doing okay in the club. I was playing with the senior team in St. John's, who were doing well. They just gone from intermediate to senior, and that was actually the last game I played. Was when they I think it was against Olivs in a playoff, a local team, and we had to beat them to go senior, and they did that.
Nice way to end it.
Yeah, it was, but it was hard as well because my brothers played in the team, and then my dad would be involved in the club, and people would be kind of saying, "Sure, what's he doing? What's he going off doing that running stuff? He's doing well here," But in my heart of hearts, I knew that I wanted to give athletics a go. I wanted to see what could happen, and I felt I was making inroads. In that, I didn't know if it was ever going to become a career or something I would make money of.
So how did you kind of, because at that stage you've done your leaving cert, you're focused on the athletics. So I've seen you speak in other media outlets and stuff like that of how you didn't have you just saw athletics as the career and you thought that. So how I suppose was that journey when you that was probably in the back of your mind?
Yeah, again, it's like these things. I was enjoying what I was doing, and I kind of got sucked into it from that perspective. And I was in college and all that at the time as well, and I'd still have my nights out. Like I probably spent, probably 2 or 3 years every Friday been hungover, like, and then the week. But you're made of rubber back then, you just bounce back on a Saturday, you go train, it's grand, it's all right. And then I was just progressing. I was just getting a little bit better. And then it wasn't until I won my first Europeans in Madrid where it was kind of like, oh God, like, and I can be honest and say it. I didn't go expecting to win. I can remember clearly that year in early 2005. I started running, doing indoor races, and I was unbeaten. And I went to the British Championships and I won those. And that's always a bit of a good benchmark. I think around 46 something. And I can remember thinking, like, Jesus, I'm unbeaten in a couple of races. And that's a great way because, you're not focusing on times or anything like that. You're just going for the win. And suddenly when you go on an unbeaten run, just things began to fall into place. And then it was the Europeans coming up. And I can remember looking at the ranking and I was like, God, I think I was 5th or something. And then a few people weren't competing in the Europeans for various injuries and stuff like that. And then I was like, actually, I'm really high in the rankings here. Maybe I could get a medal. But at the same time, it was lovely to go into a championship where there was no expectation. Nobody expected me. Been young, first championships. Nobody really expected me to kind of, all gone well, might make a final, might nick a minor medal, but not to win the thing. And I did. And that was when a real kind of game changer was like, oh, hang on, actually, I've actually won a European medal. It was Ireland's first gold medal in about, I think it was like 76 years or something. Bob Tisdale back in 1932 was our last sprint medalist. And then, like, it was really weird, really strange, because you win, you do the lap of honour, you do the stuff that you dream of as a little kid, and then everything changes. Then it's like, oh, what's next? What's your next championship? Are you gonna win the Olympics? You're gonna win the Worlds, and you're kind of going, hang on a second, like, it's a lot to take in, and that was, and I probably didn't enjoy that. I remember coming home and kind of like afraid to go down to the shop and get a sandwich for the fear of bumping into someone and having to talk about it and all that. It was just a bit like overwhelming at times. And
were you getting like not global recognition, but like within the country?
Yeah, within the country. I can remember arriving home and the door of the airplane opened and it was like bagpipes and all this sort of stuff through Dublin Airport, and oh, don't worry about the bags, we'll come back and get the bags. It was all walk out, meet the media, all stuff that I'd never experienced before. And then straight away, cameras, microphones,
you weren't prepared for this in any way. No one had said it to you. Okay.
No. And that was a huge thing. Like, we always talk about, preparing for failure, but do we often prepare for success? Do we actually try and comprehend, okay, what happens if I win here? What's going to happen? Completely brand new to me. And then the phone starts ringing and there's people go, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Or, can you come onto this show? Or can you do, all of these things? And I'm 21 at the time thinking, what's going on? Like, who do I do? Is it agent or like what? All this sort of stuff, which is brand new, And then you start thinking, oh, well, maybe I should make something off the back of this. Maybe, and you start putting this pressure on yourself. Maybe I should be capitalising this. How do I make money out of this? How do I, get sponsors? All of these things start flooding in, and I wasn't prepared for it, and I struggled with that. I came back on a Monday, and then I went down and got the Lewis on a Tuesday into lectures. I was in college. And I can remember going on to the Lewis, and I always tell this story because it was weird. They used to hand out a free Metro paper. And I can remember standing on a packed Lewis, and all these Metro papers have been handed out, and people start looking at me, and one guy's looking down at the paper and then looking at me, looking back down. And it was my fat head in the back pages of the paper. And I'm kind of like looking at him going, geez. And then he's like, oh, well done. And it was weird. And some people might go, oh, it's brilliant, it's great. But I felt there was an awful lot of pressure that came with that, an awful lot of expectation. And then rolled into the summer, and I'd struggled with that. And I think emotionally I'd probably peaked, around kind of like March, winning that medal and everything that brought in, that attention, and, even yourself trying to manage that emotionally. And you ride that wave a little bit. But then the outdoor season came, and I was fatigued and I was tired, and that was a huge kind of learning curve for me because I didn't perform well in that summer, and I knew why. I just didn't deal with these kind of emotions, and like sports psychology and all that sort of stuff didn't really exist back then. And
you're not the only, like, you're an athlete on your own. A lot of, even if a team kind of goes through, like Leicester City, for example, I'm just using them. They were never expected to win the Premier League. and then they struggled off the back of it because they were, they probably weren't prepared for the success, like you say. But that's a whole team. You're just one person. They have people there to deal with that stuff, and you didn't. That's
it. Like, and it's a good reference point, because like a team, you come into the dressing room and you go, how are you dealing with this? People will chat and go, geez, I'm a bit this, that, or the other. I'm tired and fatigued and all that, and they probably have an open kind of dialogue about it. But when you are an individual, it is hard. Like, yes, I had a training group, and yes, I had a coach, but we're all individuals and we're all competing as individuals. So it's very hard for me to turn around to someone I'm training with and go, how did you deal with winning? Like, I'm not at that level, so it's from that perspective, it's weird. It's hard for people to maybe kind of show that empathy, because they just don't understand. And that's kind of what I struggled with. And but again, you kind of just, it'll be grand, it'll be fine, it'll be fine.
That Irish attitude.
It is, you'll be grand, And I can remember kind of just going, look, it'll be grand. Then the season kind of kicked off. I ran like a donkey. And then you come to the end of the summer, grand, it's all done. Then you roll into the next year. And that was probably the biggest change for me. I didn't know it at the time, but I went to Gothenburg for the European Outdoors, and I'd improved. So I was back kind of running well. I'd improved as an athlete. I won the nationals that year in a personal best time. So, I was just outside the Irish record and just outside the A qualification for global champs, Olympics and Worlds. So, I was making good inroads, and I went to Gothenburg, and on paper, to make a final. Like, on paper, that's what it looked like. I could make a final, but I ran horrendously bad in the semi-final, and I'll never forget it. Like, I was devastated, because I ran like I was paddy last.
What year is this? Sorry,
this is 06.
Okay.
And that was when I finished college that year, and it was a bit like, right, what am I going to do next? Am I getting a job? Is this it now? Real world, let's go, job, pension, blah 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 blah. Or do I run? And you're kind of going, oof. Like, running's a bit fragile. There's no, like, it's not like you're going professional to a Premier League club or something like that, where, you're on a 5-year contract, here's what you're going to be paid, away you go. There's no security. There's nothing. And that's when I was a bit like, off the back of Gothenburg in 06, I was like, what do I want out of this? Like, and I wanted to give it a go. And that was the big change. I said, right, well, if I'm going to give it a go, it's all in, everything. 2-footed, let's go. So I relocated over to England, and I said, if I'm going to give this a go, I need to go full time, to put myself in an environment where I'm training with really good athletes, good full time coach. We go away on training camps, all that sort of stuff, professional. And that's what I did. So I relocated to, you mentioned Leicester. Loughborough is like 15-20 minutes outside of Leicester. Big university town, huge about sport. Like, that's their niche. Centre of excellence for a number of kind of like Olympic sports, swimming, triathlon, athletics. And there was a couple of training partners there that were really good guys. And I put myself over there, and I absolutely loved it. And that was a game changer. That was really, even making that decision, I think I got a lot of empowerment from that. You kind of make that decision. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to invest everything into it. And that gives you that motivation, and you're almost inspiring yourself to go, boom, this is it. And like, I didn't want to come home with a tail between my legs, go, it didn't work. This is going to work. And it was great. Absolutely loved it. And straight away, I felt better. I felt more... I was investing everything into it. I was looking after how I was eating, how I was resting, sleep, all the other bits that maybe I wasn't looking at home. I was still probably having a couple of nights out with the lads, and maybe having the odd breakfast roll and all that stuff. So into that environment, it was like, here we go. This is what we're going to do, and I loved it. And that really kind of propelled me onto like a different level.
Did they give you, like, I was reading something about kind of psychology and having the identity of actually having, knowing who you were then, because you'd made that decision. Like, you didn't have a career before, you didn't have, but you knew then you were an athlete.
I was an athlete.
That was your identity.
I was a full-time athlete, and that was me. And I studied part-time and stuff over there, did a master's and all that, but I was there to run, and that was it. And it was actually easier to be an athlete because I was surrounded by like-minded people. It was, you're in your own little kind of like cocoon ecosystem, surrounded by like-minded people who are doing the same thing. So when it came to the weekends, it wasn't about like, we going into town, nightclubs, beers, all that stuff. It just didn't exist. And I'm not saying it was boring or anything. It wasn't. We'd still like socialise and all, but we just did it in a different way because
probably bigger things to focus on. And that's exactly it. Like, people I was training with were going for Olympics, going to win global medals, European medals, and it was just a fantastic sort of
like the
You're kind of in that
ecosystem to be
high
in,
performance
So,
environment,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
where they think differently to.
And you kind of
I'd still be going out
realise.
for pints
No,
now,
it is. And like, look, trust me, we had a couple of blowouts and all that, like, you know, epic ones. But it all kind of fitted in, and it was just a great environment. I loved it, like, you know. And you know, when I think back, like, they were brilliant years. So like all my 20s, you know, throughout that whole kind of 10-year period, I was an athlete. It gave me huge identity. I was doing very well. Time started you know, getting quicker. I retained that European title. I was going to Olympic Games. I went to the Worlds. You know, I became a finalist, top 6 in the world. All of these things, fantastic. And you know, I was a professional athlete, and you know, thankfully, I was at a level where I was able to make a bit of money and pay the bills and keep a roof over my head, and which enabled me then to train full time. And yeah, it was something that I loved, and it was a great kind of part of my life. And now I look back at it, and like, I miss Loughborough. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I met my wife over there, and you know, I really enjoyed living in England. I know some people might not agree, but it was great. It was a great country to live in. You know, there was so much happening, so much things to do. You know, sport was at the forefront of where we were, and it was just a really enjoyable experience.
Was she into the whole athletics?
Oh, she ran, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She ran. Charlotte. So she was a middle distance runner, so 800s, 15. And look, we were compatible from that perspective. She understood it.
Competitive?
She'd beat me on the long distance stuff, but I'd absolutely, you know, I'd win easy on the shorter distances. But you know, she was a good athlete. She studied there and she trained and stuff. And I think, you know, she understood that, and she'll openly admit this, that, you know, she understood for a period of years that she wasn't priority number one. You know, my athletics was, but she accepted that and she understood that. And, you know, she was a great supporter and still is in terms of, you know, what I want to do. But she understood it. She got it. She got the fact that, like, it wasn't Saturday nights going out and stuff like that. It was like, I've got training tomorrow, which for many people might sound a bit boring when, say, your boyfriend is like, oh, he's at home, he's in bed at 9 o'clock, he's got a training session tomorrow. It's a Saturday night. But it was all part of it.
She probably respected the discipline that you'd show. Yeah,
I think so. And like, I think herself kind of being an athlete and running kind of understood that that's what you need to do. That's the requirements of an elite athlete if you want to not only compete at the highest level but win.
Yeah,
you know. So it made, yeah, it was. Look, we're still married, so obviously it obviously worked.
It worked out well for both. So how was that? I suppose that period then, because you're obviously training full time. And
yeah.
From that point to then kind of how it ended and stuff.
Yeah.
What was it like from your point of view?
Look, it was. You think?
I can tell by looking at you here, like you look back with a lot of fondness. It might be a regret, but there's definitely a lot.
Yeah, like there's a bit of everything in there. Like it probably took me a couple of years to get to a point where I began to look back with fondness. Like I looked back for years with resentment. I look back with regret. You know, decisions I made, because I didn't have an exit plan out of my sport. I thought I was going to go to Beijing Olympics. I then go on to London and then go on to Rio, and I'd retire. So I do 3 Olympics. That was the plan. You know, I made 1. I went to Beijing, didn't run that well in Beijing, came off the back of that, you know, learnt an awful lot, debriefed, and really kind of got into that mindset of kind of, you know, really debriefing and been open and honest, talking to the people around me, my coach, training partners, all that. Learned from it. 2009, fantastic year for me. World finalists, all the rest of it. You know, I was now at the highest level of the sport. I wanted more. I wanted to push on. London was only a couple of years away. I relocated to America, and that's when things began to unravel. I got badly injured in America, and the whole kind of social aspect to it as well. I was literally 24/7 by myself, and then I get injured. So I'm even further kind of, you know, away from everybody, and even having that emotional support of having Charlotte, having parents, having friends, you know, hop on a flight within less than an hour and back in Dublin if needed be. I was now kind of what felt like on the other side of the world over in Florida, and
time difference,
everything. And you know, I'd be quite kind of pig-headed. I've always, like, I wouldn't put my hand up for help. I can do this, I can do this, you know?
But even if you did, I don't think, what year is that, 09 you say?
That was I moved over there at the end of kind of 2010.
Yeah, it's just even like only kind of Facebook and stuff like that was around at the time. There wasn't like what there is
No,
now.
there wasn't.
The WhatsApp calls and stuff like that. So it's so easy to stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
Whereas back then, obviously, it wasn't, and it's not even that long ago. It's like,
No,
what,
it's
it'll be 13 years in January.
It's actually a really good point, because like the time zone was a pain in the arse.
I know, because I went to Australia in 2011 myself, and I remember how hard that was coming back. So
Yeah, so you can imagine then if things aren't going that well, and you know you're injured, and I couldn't train, and like Florida is a lonely place. Like, it's, people think about theme parks, beaches, sunny weather, but when you're there for the whole year, like I was living by myself.
I only ever see weirdos, because if you ever look at all the Netflix documentaries, like Joe Exotic and all, they're all in Florida.
They're all in Florida, yeah. Well, there's a couple of strange characters now, I have to admit.
But it does look like a good place when you talk about the other stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, but and that was it, and you know you kind of just go, right, it'll be all right, but it wasn't, and really struggled that year. Got to a point, no, I need to relocate, so went back to Loughborough, year out from London, right, get back into shape, blah blah blah. But I'd missed so much. I came back into my training group, and I realised I was like meters behind the lads, and that I was getting frustrated. And then
that's from the injuries.
The injury I'd missed, like I hadn't raced in 2011 at all, and I'd missed, like I was injured for like 3 months, and then I tried to come back and rush things for the season. Then I had Achilles problems. So in a nutshell, I probably missed nearly 6-7 months of like proper consistent training and racing.
And then probably at that time you needed it.
I needed it to keep that like kind of progression, and then mentally though you get a bit frustrated. You're putting pressure on yourself, and the way athletics kind of works, it's all performance related. Like, there's no long-term contract, so if I'm not performing, I could easily lose my grant, I could lose sponsors. It's very cutthroat. So I hadn't raced, so I hadn't made any money from the circuit. Then there was question marks over like, would I be, from a sponsor's perspective, you know, get my contracts be cut because I hadn't performed, I hadn't raced. So then there's all this kind of pressure coming on, and then it's like, it's London, I gotta get back for London, gotta get back, gotta qualify. And then I had a recurrence of the injury. So I think when I look back, physical and mental as well, I think I put an awful lot of pressure on myself. I think I didn't trust my body. You know, and
that can be like a psychology thing
Big
as well.
time.
Like, your brain, you know, is telling you there's a problem, but maybe your body's okay.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it could be the other way around, where your body is not right, but your mind's telling it is, and then you get injured.
Absolutely. And these things have to kind of be in sync, particularly when you're trying to compete at the highest level. And every time I was running, I was kind of like, I was so afraid that I would get injured again. And you have to go through that, and it inevitably happened. So I missed London, and then like I was like, I'm not going to retire on this. I'm going to give it one more go. And I was back in England, but Charlotte was living down in London. She was working for the British Olympic Association, so we're still doing kind of long distance. And we both said, like, after London, we'll get back under one roof, and you know, we'll try and enjoy. I'll continue. We'll try and enjoy life a little bit. So we went to Australia, and we loved it. The two of us went down. She started working for the Canberra Raiders, the Pro Rugby League team. I was training in the AIS in Canberra. Great group, great coach. Got myself back into really good shape, preparing for a race in Japan. Boom, tore my Achilles, and that was it. And I was 30, and
so that was kind of like last chance, was it?
That was, yeah. Because I made a promise with myself when I got the ferry over to England back in 2006. When I left the house in Ballantyre, I was on the ferry, and one of these kind of poignant like moments, I said to myself, right, here's how it's going to go. When I get to the age of 30, I want to be able to look in the mirror and say I gave it a go. I gave it a crack. And I was now 30, injured in Australia, wasn't making any money from the sport. It was costing me money to run. I'm retiring. That was it. I said, going home. And like things happened. Like, I went home. The only reason I came home to Dublin was because I got asked to do Celebrity MasterChef, and I was like, well, I'm not running, not doing anything else, might as well do this. Came home. Charlotte was still in Australia, and that kind of filled the void for that summer, because I couldn't compete. My body was just shot. Mentally I was shot as well.
And this was on RTE.
This was on RTE, yeah. So I ended up winning that thing. Don't know how I did, but it was great. It was brilliant. But it kind of distracted me away from the reality of my career being over. But then September came, and September was when I'd usually start training again, and I wasn't. And that's when I began to struggle with the whole change, like everything about like flipping hell, like who am I? Like
that, don't have like a purpose.
Don't have a purpose.
Training would be your purpose too.
And that was where, like, you know, we talk about
struggle with that too.
Yeah, like a lot of elite sports people, look, my sport defined me. It gave me identity. It gave me like status. It gave me a title. You know, all of that sort of stuff. And I probably kind of like I thought I was going to continue. I thought I was going to go on for another couple of years. So I didn't really think about that exit plan. What am I going to do next? Even though I had education all behind me, but like the reality of kind of waking up on a Monday morning thinking, what do I do now? Like, what am I going to do the rest of my life? What do I want to do? I just want to run. And that's where I began to kind of idolise my past. I was like, I just want to go back to England. I just want to go back to Loughborough. I just want to go back running. But I knew I couldn't, and I knew like I couldn't, even if I went back and gave it everything, could I get back to that level? Like the odds are stacked against me now with my age and all that sort of stuff, and
just injury
recurrence, and I did a lot of kind of like stress and all that, and I struggled with that, and then kind of went into panic. Right, what am I going to do? Or I'll get a job. So you just take the first job because why? Because I wanted money and I wanted a title. So if I walked down the street, oh, what do you do? Oh, I do this. I was envious of people who had a title because I had no identity now.
I can relate to that because when I started the football channel, people come up to you when you're on the night. It's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I do this. You don't know how to say it.
I used to hate going for it to get my hair cut because busy day,
and you'd almost make up something.
Yeah, I've done that. Jeez, I've done that. I'm a physio sometimes. Physio. Yeah, I've used that loads of times.
You do look like you could get away with
it. Well, I can blag my way because I've been on a physio bed like so many times. But it's all of that. I look back, and that's when I began to resent my sport and even resent things like MasterChef because it put me in a situation. So my sport put me in this situation. I hate my sport. It fucking did this to me. And that annoyed me. So I hated athletics. I hated sport. I was envious then of any other sports person that maybe went on and did other things. And social media now was coming into it. So I'd be scrolling, looking at all these other people who I knew or the sports people who'd retired and gone on to do this and do that. I'm like, why am I doing that? So this pressure, of I had to have success. I was successful in athletics. I had to be successful. So all of this was just constant. Took a job that came my way. Why? Because I thought it paid well and I'd have something. But it was the wrong decision because I didn't is this what I want to do? I don't know. I'll just do it. And then the reality of that was spending a lot of time by myself. I was essentially a rep on the road, going all over the place, like 5 hours, 6 hours in the car some days, and just constantly talking to myself negatively. Got away from eating well and exercise and did no exercise. Used to just pig out on food. I comfort eat essentially, and then you'd come home, I'd be irritable, I'd be I just didn't want to be around people either, because I didn't want the questions.
How was your missus dealing with this as a Charlotte at the time?
Yeah, it was hard, because
sounds like she was a constant.
Yeah,
and obviously a great person to have through all this, and obviously they're still together with two kids now, but through all that must have been testing.
Yeah, she should be sitting here to answer that question because I can only imagine. I was a nightmare. We've talked about it, and it's been years, and I got the help I needed, and I still go to counselling. One of the best things I've ever done, and that's made me understand kind of the journey that I've been on and understand the little triggers. But at that moment of time, she was on eggshells every day around me. She didn't know what David was going to get out of bed. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I was irritable. I was tired. I didn't want to do anything. And she might say, maybe you should talk to someone. If she said that to me, a row. I'd be like, I don't understand.
The shield up, yeah.
Yeah, the shield come at 100%. And I just kept pushing her away. And it's only now that I realise the pressure that she probably put on herself. She knows me better than anybody else. So she's thinking, I need to fix him. I need to fix him. I need to help. But anytime she'd try, just push her away. And it was hard, yeah. And then she'd worry about me an awful lot. My mental health was not good. I'd have tantrums. I'd have panic attacks in the house, and I'd say real negative things I'd suicidal thoughts, and I'd shout these out, and then I'd storm out of the house. So she's sitting at home going where is he? And that's a terrible thing. And we'd got married through this as well, and then she was pregnant, and that's when things kind of I can remember having it got to a point where I packed in the job, got a new job, and then Saturday would come and I'd be okay on a Saturday, and then Sunday doom and gloom because I dreaded the week. I dreaded Monday mornings.
Yeah. So you're living for the weekend.
Living for the weekend. Firefight. I used to think firefight till a Friday. Get to Friday. Saturday I was kind of okay, and then Sunday doom and gloom. And that was when she was heavily pregnant, and I had a massive panic attack on a Sunday, and I can remember kind of looking at her thinking, how am I going to bring a child into this world? Like, I need to sort my shit out. And I did. Thankfully, I made a call, and I spoke to someone who I respected and who I heard at an event one time talk about his mental health. And I remember thinking, Jesus, that's me. And from there, then I started going to counselling and began to get kind of the help. And I took a bit of time out, probably the best thing again I did. I got away from money. It was not about money, you know what I mean? That does not. I always thought if I had more money, I'd feel content and I'd be fulfilled. It's just all fake, like it's endless.
Yeah.
Give me
Comes
more,
and
give me
goes,
more.
yeah.
Comes and goes. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my purpose. What do I want to do? What makes me happy? I didn't know any of these things, and I had to go on a bit of a journey to try and figure that out. And I probably still am on that journey, and I know I'll be managing my mental health for the rest of my life. But counselling really helped.
So just in case anyone or any of the listeners, like, where can people go if they don't know to talk to people or whatever?
Yeah, like in my experience, it depends kind of what walk of life you're in. Like, a lot of people might work in companies that have, say, employee assistance programs available to them, which a lot of the counselling comes with that, and it's free and it's impartial and it's all in confidence for both that individual and maybe their family as well. That'd be one thing I'd certainly look at. And then look, as a nation, we are a little bit behind in terms of mental health provision and mental health kind of resources that are out there. There's a lot of waiting lists and things like that. Like I went private. I found someone who I connected with, and I paid them money and I go. Now there's different levels you can pay as well. So I'd really look into this, because some people are put off thinking it's very expensive, but there is other levels that you can pay, which
I think this
give
is
you opportunity.
some people are just don't know where to go.
Don't know where to go. Like, I the best thing I did was I spoke to someone. Okay, and I don't mind mentioning who it was Richie Sadler. Okay. Read Richie's book, but prior to that, Richie's from the same area as
Local
me.
lad,
yeah, local fella, and I heard him speak at an event in town, and that was something that resonated, and I reached out to him. So like that's where I went, and off the back of that, I kind of who did you go and talk to? So I asked him, and he gave me a list of people. And he gave me one great piece of advice: was you're not going to connect with all these people, because I think sometimes people think, I'll go to a counsellor, but it's a human. You might not connect with that person. You might not feel comfortable in their presence.
I've seen PJ Gallagher recently come out, and he said that you went to a couple before you found one.
I went to 5.
Yeah,
and it was the 5th person that I connected with, from counsellors to psychotherapists.
Was there a point where you nearly gave up?
Like you're talking about like probably over the course of like a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
And other people would say, "Oh, go to this person." I'd go, and I'd never go back. I didn't feel I was getting anything from it.
There's no connection.
Yeah, but I think in terms of like, if there is people kind of watching and listening, is like, do reach out. There is some great charities out there. There is resources available. There is like, places that you can go and have a conversation with. And like, again, if anyone wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to kind of share where I go and, things like that, and different resources that are available. But like there is like the Samaritans, there is a whole host of charities out there that can help you out of house. All these are doing great work. The thing is, don't be afraid to reach out. I was for a long time, because I was afraid of being judged. I was always afraid of like, I'm coming from sports, I have to be strong, I have to be fit, I have to be fast, show no weakness, and I thought it'd be judged, So that's probably one of the biggest roadblock to stop me from kind of reaching out, But it's I think, people always ask me like, what would be the best thing, have you learned from sport and stuff like that? I actually think that whole journey, like probably the biggest thing I learned was showing an element of vulnerability, like, because if I didn't do that, like I don't know where I'd be today, and I think it's taught me a lot of understanding about who I am and what are the things that I want to do and what are the things that make me happy. But it's constant work, and I'm not going to say that it's not. Like, that's why I still go to a counsellor.
Yeah. Well, I had Keith Tracy on last week, and he was a former footballer, and he became an alcoholic and a sex addict, and his wife stuck through all of that, and he had to go and get help. And again, like you, he reacted the same way.
Yeah.
Didn't want to know, but then he got to a breaking point, and now he's completely U-turned. He's working a lot, actually, kind of like you, within TV and stuff. He's getting a lot of work in Virgin Media, RTE, so on and so forth. But I suppose when you got the help when so did life start turning for you? Then your baby was born.
Yeah, so Oscar's nearly he's 6, you know.
He's the fella who dropped to school today. So.
Yeah. So dropped to school, and you know he's great. Like he's into sport now as well. He plays soccer locally and playing GA, and he does all sorts of stuff. And then we have Olivia now who's 4, little girl, and then a little boy as well. So Louis is only a year and a half. So it's busy, but like this, like I'm in a much better place. And like I said, I've kind of learned an awful lot, but it took time. And I think that's the thing. It takes time. And, you know, you mentioned, you know, like other kind of sports people, stuff like that, but it's the change. And that's the hard part. And I think in society, like from recession back in 08, 09 to the pandemic, you know, all of these things have caused an awful lot of change. And that's where I think, you know, as a result of that, mental health cases and issues have risen. But it's so obvious. It's because it's change, and people like their routine. They like being in control. And then suddenly when that's taken away, it's, in my experience, that's when I crumbled. And, you know, I got the help. It's something I still work on now. And, yeah, like it's, I don't know if there was a changing point. I think, like, I vividly remember kind of looking at Charlotte heavily pregnant thinking, right, I need help. And I got that. And then slowly over time, I began to, you know, say no to a lot of things and begin to understand, do I want to do this? And, you know, try and slow the mind down a little bit, because I began working for myself, and, you know, even with that, it's peaks and troughs, and you're kind of like, you're nodding, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Suddenly it was like 7 days a week, yeah, because you're chasing, because you're so afraid that, like...
Well, you have to, you have to at the start, you have to do things for free.
You have to. And like... And, you know, then I get to a point where, you know, I began to build good relationships with people, and began getting kind of opportunities in both TV, RTE, things like that, media, working with a couple of brands. And then I kind of, one great kind of piece of advice I got was like, David, how much do you need? And I remember thinking, what do you mean? He goes, how much do you need? And I was, at the time, I was like, as much as I can get. And it's only now do I realise, like, how much do I need to live the life I want to live? If I want to have time with my kids, if I want to, you know, go for a run or go out on my bike or, you know, whatever that might be, how much do I need? How much do I need to enable me to do the things I want? We can all have more, but like more comes at a price. And that was probably one of the best pieces of advice I got, because it just slowed me down a little bit, and it wasn't always about more equals happiness. And I think for me, I've got a good idea about like what makes me feel good. And something that I'd really kind of, I enjoy is being present mentally and physically with the people that matter most, my family, you know. Whereas before, I might be with them, but my mind is going, I need to do this, need to do that, and it's just a million miles an hour. Yeah. And I think it's that pace. I've kind of managed to understand, okay, well, and you know, what works for me, and then I just need to kind of try and make it happen.
Yeah, I think there's finding that balance, and it's really hard. I'm still trying to find it myself, but so I can't sit here as an expert telling you.
No, but look, I can sit here and, you know, oh yeah, Gillick has it all sorted. Nah, man, I can wake up next week and be like, jeez, it's a busy week, or it's crazy. What am I doing this for? And we have those moments. But the interesting thing about that is, and again, it's something that I learned, is like, that's okay. You're going to have these moments, but be aware of it. If we're not aware of it and aware of the impact, well, then we're never going to be able to manage it. And that's where we kind of go, yeah, okay, look, it's really busy, it's manic. Why did I say I do this? You learn from it. And life is just full of learnings. And I think when I came out of sport, I felt I should know everything, you know, and I was trying to keep up with lads who were like 10 years ahead of me in careers, you know, because I'd gone and did sport for like 10 years. So I was trying to kind of be maybe just grab it and go with it, instead of going, right, well, here's where I am. Let's just work on this. And it's just that awareness piece, I think, is huge, and try and kind of have your little, like, as I call it, the resilience toolbox, right? So spot the little triggers, and then try and manage them, you know.
Well, I suppose that brings us into, you've 2 books, best-selling books.
Yeah.
David Gillick's Kitchen, and then you've the more recent one then, that was Back on Track.
Yeah.
So I suppose, did writing them, did they help you?
Yeah, they did. The first one was one of these things, you do a bit of reality TV, and then it's like, oh, you do a book after it. So I did the cookbook, and it went very well. And like, I enjoyed, it was hard work. Like, I'm not a Neville Maguire who might have a couple of people helping him out to do books, and you're banging out a couple a year. And again, Neville Maguire's a chef. I'm not a chef. I'm a master chef, but I'm not a chef, if that makes sense. But it was great, and it was good, and it was something that I enjoyed doing. And then I got asked to do a second one. I was kind of like, oh, do I want to do this? And then I said, yeah, no, do you know what? I will do it, but I want to do it a little bit different. So the whole kind of premise of Back on Track is like, I'm looking at the exercise element to it. I'm looking at like the mindset. I'm looking at the sleep. So that was something that really was my reflection on the years between probably the 2 years prior to that, which would be the 2 years after my career, where, okay, well, what got me back on track? And that was kind of those 4 key areas that I began to really focus on, and became kind of something that was integral to my daily and weekly life. And that's why I wanted to put it in a kind of book format like that, to help other people and kind of say, well, look, here's some of the things that I did that worked, and kind of include them in it. And yeah, it kind of went well. And it's funny, even when you mention like you got 2 books, it's kind of like, yeah, God, I have 2. I've wrote 2 books. Like I forget about that.
Yeah, well, they're good achievements to have, because not everyone.
Yeah, they
has
are.
books,
Yeah.
and so in those aspects, it's good to look back. I also see, like, you're an ambassador for Lidl.
Yeah.
I think you might be an ambassador for ASICS. So
Yes.
You have a competition with them on your Instagram.
Yeah, there is actually. Yeah.
So if you want to plug that.
No, yeah. Look, it's one of these things. I'm blessed, and I think like what's worked pretty well is kind of building those relationships. I do a lot of work with VHI, Lidl, ASICS, and we do. Yeah, right now there is a competition to win a couple of pairs of trainers on my Instagram account. So you just need to tell us your shoe size and like and reshare and do all that.
When does that? Because this will be out next Tuesday. So
might have been passed.
Oh, we can share it anyway.
Well, we might have more. Don't worry.
Oh,
all right, we'll try and sort people out. Look, it's great now. Obviously, doing a bit of TV work as well, doing a lot of kind of coverage with RT in terms of athletics and the Olympics, and do a bit of rowing and things like that. So it's great. And it's funny because I remember someone was asking me, how did you get into this? Did you plan it? And I was like, well, not really. It kind of, things happen, opportunities open, and you kind of just throw yourself in.
Did you approach anyone, or did someone come to you, say, because you obviously Celebrity MasterChef, did someone from RT go, actually, you'd be a great fit for this? I know you've done stuff off the ball as well.
Yeah.
Regular contributor.
I've kind of, I suppose there was a time, I think it was around the London Olympics, where I was injured and I wasn't going, and I randomly bumped into Peter Collins in Dundrum. And I was just like,
he's from Knockline, yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of just like, actually, wouldn't mind actually seeing if I could maybe get an in here. And in fairness, like, then he said, I'll ask one of the producers or something. Lo and behold, got a phone call. That was the first kind of big gig that I did, the London Olympics. And then I've done every Olympic since. And like, I've done other little things. I've gone to them with ideas like, so for example, the World Athletics, we don't have the rights, but we have kind of certain rights under the European Broadcasting Union, which means we can get access to athletes. So I went with a Mojo kit, my mobile phone and microphone, got myself over there.
Usain Bolt one?
This is the Usain Bolt one, yeah. It was right in front of Usain Bolt.
Sorry, go on.
It came off. It was one of the rounds, I think it was a semi-final of the World Champs, and like Usain Bolt is just like his hot property, and right in front of me in the mix zone, and had the mic, and he's talking away, and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant, this is so good. Went back, viewed it, and there was no sound. My mic didn't work. I was like, oh God.
But you'd be surprised at how much that actually happens and things. I've done that countless times as well. I remember turning up when Mick McCarthy got the job for the Irish job, and I had a phone in one hand and a mic, and it's connected. I'm trying to talk to him and interview him and do that all at the same time.
That's exactly it. It was connected, but like unknown to me, the connection wasn't like properly in. Didn't get it. But again, I kind of went and I did it. I had my tripod and stuff like that, and I've gone on and a few other little kind of trips like that, and done it all by myself. So I think from that perspective, it's like, look, I'm willing, I'm trying things, and I think people see that and they go, oh, fair play to them. And off the back of that, then I've done a lot more kind of stuff with RT, and yeah, very lucky, and again, great people to work with. But I try and make it easy for them as well. That I'd like to think that I'm easy to work with, and like I can do numerous things as well. So it's it's great, and I love now kind of being a part of the sport as well. And I've got to a point now where I look back at my sport with a lot of fondness. It's given me so many opportunities, and I've managed to travel the world. Met my wife through it. But like all of that came from athletics, and I have regrets, certain decisions I made, but regrets aren't bad. I've tried. That's the thing. And if I never tried these things, I would have never known. A lot of learnings in there, and again, working with a lot of brands as well. It's given me a lot of opportunities, and I'm just so grateful for for everyone to give me those kind of opportunities, you know.
Well, I wouldn't really look back with resentment because of what it's given you. I mean, you've travelled the world.
Yeah.
You've got brands, you know, that want to work with you. Then you've obviously got TV work out of it. You've met your wife through it and stuff like that. Obviously, there were setbacks along the way, but there's a lot more. If I was to look at you, and I don't know the whole ins and outs, but definitely I would look back in a more positive sense that what it's given you maybe after athletics. What you thought the end of the athletics was the end.
That was it.
You know,
that was the end of me.
Yeah,
you know?
But it's mad how it kind of worked out.
And you're right, like, and I think that's something that we all kind of tend to do now and then, is like we focus on maybe the one that got away, and it's, you know, it all starts, and again, a lot of people over the last couple of years will talk about gratitude and maybe just kind of setting the day up. Okay, what are the 3 things you're grateful for? And it might sound a bit like, oh, here we go again, but like that does help. You know, you might have kids, you might have a roof over your head, you might have a nice car, you might have nice clothes, whatever that might be. But that could be very personal to you. And if that gives you that little pep in your step, well, then that's the most important thing. And, you know, I went years thinking about, I should have done this, and I should have made the Olympic final, and I should have won a global medal, etc., etc. But then you have to stop yourself and go, well, actually, look at the things that, you know, I did win. Look at the things that I'm doing now off the back of a career. And, you know, I did Hell Week this year as well, which was a fantastic thing to do. And I wanted to test myself. I wanted to put myself back into, you know.
Has that aired yet? No.
Yeah, that's all done. Yeah. So you haven't watched it then?
No. Jamie will kill you.
It's on the player. Jamie will kill you. No, but it was great. And, you know, one of the hardest things that I've ever done, one of the best things. And I think it was, you know, I'd gone so far away from sport. I always kind of thought, could I go to the well again? You know, could I go? Do I still have it? And that was, it was a proud kind of moment doing that show. But all of these things, it's all kind of, I suppose, come off the back of my athletic career, and it's, I'm proud to be back living in the area I grew up in, and, you know, giving back now to the clubs that all helped me, and kind of my kids coming through and supporting them and just giving them the time to enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, and even during the COVID, because that's how I properly met you, was in here, and we were
God,
getting all the packages for all the people who couldn't leave the house during
I'm
COVID.
still eating the rice that I cooked. Now, how many we were doing? We did about, was it 250 meals a week?
Something like
250
that,
meals on a Tuesday and a Friday.
I was just going out delivering them. I wasn't counting.
Yeah, so about 500. Trust me, I was counting the spoon of rice, but it was good fun. And again, it makes you feel good, and I think that's the empowerment thing. And even getting involved locally, whether it's through sport or whether it's volunteering or helping out people in your area that need help, it makes you feel good. And I always kind of remember someone saying, fill that emotional tank, you know. And I always one of these athletes that if I was happy off the track, you know, I'd be happy on the track. And I think it's that kind of holistic kind of view of it, you know, trying to, you know, as much as it's giving back, but it's making you feel good as well.
Yeah, I just lastly, because we're going to come into the end, but you're doing a athletics podcast now, I see, as well, and then I know you're supposed to actually be out the other day flying somewhere, and the flight got cancelled.
Oh yeah, I was meant to go to the European cross country in Turin, which turned out to be really successful. They grabbed 5 medals.
I suppose I was going to get into that. Just, you know, what state is Irish athletics in? Because I like, if you ask me anything about football, I'll know, but anything else.
Like right now, like I mentioned, the Eurocross went very well. You had Munich in the summer, which is the European Championships, extremely well. Like probably our best championship ever. A lot of youth coming through, running really well, making finals, top tens, all this sort of stuff when it matters. And you know, you look at that and you go, yeah, it's very strong. And then the European Cross was successful as well, from under 20s, under 23, and senior. So again, there is a pipeline there, and you know, it seems as though there's a good future. Again, it's transferring that, and we're going into difficult enough 2 years now because it's global years. You have a World Champs and you have an Olympic Games, which the standard is a step above. So it's going to be difficult for some of our athletes to maybe get into these championships and maybe kind of, you know, make finals and all that. But again, they're young, and there's a lot of youth in there coming through, which is very, very strong. So from that perspective, Irish athletics currently is in a really, really good place. You know, we're still heavily reliant on volunteers. We're still heavily. That's gone off.
Yeah, no, it cuts off.
All right, now we're waffling away.
We're in and around it now.
We're still heavily.
That's why I can put this.
Yeah, we're still heavily reliant on like volunteers and things like that, which, you know, if we really want to be up there and sustain what we have and be up there with some of the best athletes in the world, or nations even, we just need to make sure that we're investing in coaching and making sure that, you know, potentially we have a few more kind of full-time coaches on the ground, because that's something that we're kind of missing at the moment, and the coaches are all volunteers.
Is that like, I see that with football as well, like there's no facilities to help us progress. It's been like that for like about 20 years. I don't know what state the athletics is, you know, from that regard, but then you see so much money that goes into like horse racing.
Yeah,
and
like
I wonder, could that money be put into athletics? Could it be put into, you know, football as well, to help? Because
see, athletics, I suppose, from that perspective, is a minority sport, so we don't get the investment, we don't get the sponsorship, and the endorsements and everything that comes with, like, say, a major sport. So, like, as I mentioned in athletics, not having full-time coach, that all costs money. So if we can ride the wave and we can try and get like title sponsors in, of which, to be fair, Athletics Ireland have a new title sponsor, 123.ie, which is great because that's going to bring in money, and hopefully that kind of helps to spend and maybe invest in the sport and help it grow. But it is like, you're always looking at other sports, and, you know, again, kind of from a soccer perspective, GAA, rugby, horse racing, you look at them and you think of the money that they're getting, you're going, oh my God, like, you know, if we could have just a little bit of that.
Yeah, even a
you
quarter,
know,
like.
yeah. And like, you look locally as well, Dundrum Dublin, fantastic. They've built a track, you know, so from a facility point of view, you know, it's been 11 years since we've had a track in the whole county of Dunleary Rathdown. So you think about the population in Dunleary Rathdown, you know, there wasn't one athletics track in that whole county. Thankfully now UCD have one, and obviously Dundrum South Dublin have one, so there's two. But that's 11 years, you know, and prior to that there was only one down in UCD, you know, where I used to train. So, you know, that is a big barrier, because if there's not facilities, you know, parents, kids just aren't going to get involved in the sport. They're going to be like, gravity's going to pull them back to the mainstream sports. And I believe, like Ireland, we have talent. We have a huge amount of talent. It's trying to give kids the opportunity, and like you can look at it from like a bigger kind of picture as well. And, you know, a lot of sports are competing for the same kind of talent pool. You know, you look at other, you know, European nations, and what do? They might have municipal sort of kind of facilities in an area that the sports are all kind of feeding out of. They also might have different times of the year that they play different sports. So they're not all kind of like, you know, you're running from GA to soccer, they miss a soccer match because you got a GA match, or there's a rugby match. You know, all these things are all kind of intertwined, whereas in some countries they have a certain kind of window for each sport. Then you might look at kind of the curriculum in schools. You know, are kids getting the variety of sports for their long-term development, from racket sports, hand-eye coordination, to, you know, agility, ABCs, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, is that happening? I'm not a teacher, I don't know, but, you know, some would say that if you go to a school and a teacher likes a certain sport, that's what you play. But that's going to exclude so many, and you're not educating kids on exercise. You're not actually developing their core skills in the long term. So, you know, maybe there's a bit of work to do in that space. You know, again, are our kids getting enough activity? Who's relying? Like, who is the person for that? Is it the parents? Is it the school? You know, for me, I think it's everyone. You know, and parents play a huge role in that as well. So, it's an interesting space, you know, and, you know, again, with the World Cup on, everyone's kind of looking at, oh, well, Croatia only have under 4 million, you know.
Yeah.
Why are they better than us? You know, or we've always been compared with New Zealand when it comes to the Olympics and things like that. But again, in Ireland, we have a massive indigenous sport, which is 2 codes in it, you know. Every parish, and I'm not hitting the GAA, I played a lot of GAA, my kids play GAA, but I can see kind of, you know, if you're in a certain parish in the country, there may not be a soccer club, may not be an athletics club, may not be a rugby club, but there will be a GAA club. So, like, they're going to play that. Are they missing out on another sport? Maybe. So again,
some of the best GAA sports stars could be.
They could be, yeah.
Irish internationals, or whatever. But yeah, I suppose it's one of those things that's kind of out of our control. So
it is out of our control, and I think, you know, like, what would I like to see? I would love if the sports didn't have to compete. If there was a way over the course of the year that kids could play for local clubs and it wasn't competing with other local clubs and other sports, if you get me. I think, you know, something like that. But that's an awful lot of work, you know. You'd have to have a lot of buy-in, and maybe too far fetched, but like with my kids, what I'll try and do what my parents did to me. They just gave me every opportunity to participate in all sorts of sports. And they were taxis, they were bringing us here, there and everywhere. But like, do I think that helped in my kind of athletic career? 100%. You know, I think playing different sports, different movements helped my development, and helped all that sort of stuff that comes with that. And then, you know, I just transferred that into the one sport as I matured.
I think a lot of people, sports stars, they always kind of reference the fact that their parents would have brought them here, there and everywhere, and that's ultimately what gave them the kind of career that they have. But just on yourself, because I think you finished at 39 now.
Yeah.
I suppose if you look back on the last kind of 9 years, have you come full circle? I think I have. Happier now?
Yeah. No, I'm definitely more content within myself. I kind of, like this year, like I did the Dublin Marathon this year. As I said, I did Hell Week. It's been a great year, probably in terms of finding myself a little bit.
You did a bit cycle as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I cycle a little bit as well, and you know, people probably think it's 3 kids. How do you do that? I know, like it's up early mornings and all that, but I know the value of that for me, and I have a very understanding wife that knows that, like, if I don't get my exercise, I'm a nightmare, you know. But at the same time, I think it gives me the clarity that I need, and that's a pillar of my kind of like performance now. But definitely, and like, you know, I can look at it from my perspective, but I think reaching out and getting the help, you know, when you mention like 30 to 39, it's a decade where I've had some dark times and all that, but it's a lot more positive as I approach 40 and head into the next kind of decade. But it's
more of a sense of achievement, maybe.
Yeah, like I'm more than happy now, like, to look back with fondness of my athletic career and look back. And even when I watch Olympics and World Champs, like, you know, I have a sense of pride that I represented my country, but I represented my family and my parents and all that, and that's
and
brilliant.
The area, I suppose, in a way.
And the area, like the area gave me so much, like Ballantyre, where I grew up, and it's like I've never forgotten that. And anywhere I've competed, I've always had a sense of pride of who I'm representing. And you know, the other thing as well, I'd love a lot of kids around here to kind of go, well, like, you know, if I could do it, so could they. And we all need that. Like, I can remember growing up in the area, and like Glenn Fitzpatrick, Richie Sadler, Coleman Goggins, you know, all these people that I would have kind of, you know, James Oliver, you know, all these people that would have had their name kind of in lights in local clubs. Like, I would have looked at those, and kind of they would have inspired me, you know. And it's like, that's what every kind of community needs. And again, the likes of like Liz McDonough, the athletics club, 49 years volunteering and coaching kids, like literally 4 days a week. You know, like, it's unbelievable, you know. And if it wasn't for those people, we wouldn't have the various clubs that are here in the area. So yeah,
they're like an unsung heroes, aren't they?
There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
and that's the backbone of sport in this country, you know, in a lot of countries, you know, is that volunteerism, and people just been, you know, really generous with their time, and that's, without that, I wouldn't have gone and got to where I went. So yeah, no, it's good. And like, I think having kids gives you a different perspective, you know, and
keep you busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you got a good mix, because you got like almost a newborn, a year and a half.
Yeah. It's a good mix, but it's a busy mix, because you've got,
it's easy
like,
to say from the outside.
Yeah, it is. Like, so Oscar's at an age now where he's just full of beans. He wants to play sport. He wants to go kick a football, stuff like that. Olivia is just 4 now, so she's coming into that as well, gymnastics and dancing and all that stuff. And then you've got Louis, who's still running around the nappies. So you're kind of like, you know, he's still a baby, still naps. So it's busy, but like, it's fun as well. And like, you know, with Christmas and all that, it's great. The magic of Christmas is back, and everything that comes with that. So look, we're very, very lucky, you know, extremely lucky to have 3 beautiful kids. And you know, that's what it's all about now. And I think that's probably what I've learned over the 10 years, is like, I've gone from everything been about me, performance, training, competing, you know, I was priority number 1, to now, like, I'm probably P3, P4, you know. There's a lot of people coming before me now, but that's fine. And that took me probably a while to get used to. It might sound a bit like, I don't know, selfish, but like, when you're in a sport where it's all about you, that's it. It's all about you. and then you have to transfer out of that and kind of realize you're in the real world now. And I can remember when I started that job, walking in almost thinking that, oh, you know, maybe people will kind of know me and stuff like that. Nobody gave a shit because they're all doing their job, and it wasn't a bad way. It's just like, you know, you were an athlete, now you're this, come on, let's go, hit your targets, you know, sell, get out, do it.
Yeah,
you know, and
ruthless kind of.
And it's learning. That's the thing. Sport is sport. You've only got a shelf life, and I think I can happily look back and go, yeah, I maximised that, and now it's kind of moving on to the next phase. But it's definitely a transitional phase, you know, and it takes time. I thought it might kind of take a couple of weeks, but in reality, it took a couple of years. And I think one of the best things, like I said, was that kind of piece about vulnerability, where I now am aware that I need to work, and I'll continue to work on my mental health as much as my physical well-being for the rest of my life. I'm okay with that.
I definitely think there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, and they'll resonate from what you're saying, and obviously from the fact that you've got help. Like, there's a lot of athletes I know that, you know, listen to this because there's a lot of talk of mental health.
Yeah,
a lot of similarities to a lot of the guests I've had. It's just going to happen that way, which is
but like what struck me before when I started speaking about my own mental health and things like that, and kind of the fact that I was struggling, the amount of people that came to me, like publicly and privately, and would have said, look, you know, I've never competed at your level. Like, one guy in particular played GA for his whole life for his local club, at a senior level for his club, but he was like, I've been doing it since I was a kid. He retired, he packed it in when he was 35, and he was like, I'm struggling, and I can't believe, I'm almost embarrassed to say I'm struggling. And like, it was something that defined him in his local community. It was part of his life training, going to games. His social circle all came from that. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's Olympics or if it's going to the local park. It's something, if it's important to you and it ends, that's when maybe we get a few issues around it. And that's fine. That's okay. It's almost normalising that. And if we can normalise that, help remove the stigma, particularly about like the male stigma around mental health, and even just kind of talking about it, that's a positive. And that's something that I do a lot in the corporate world now. I talk about these things, and, you know, I find like if I can help just that one person, if I get one person that messages me or asks me a question, well, then that's a start. And if I could help that individual just reach out, that's a win. And that makes me feel good. And that's why I'm very open and honest about my journey, because I buried it for like nearly 3 years. I was too ashamed to talk about it for the fear of what people might say. But in reality, it was the best thing I could have done, was just be open and honest, because you're helping people, and that's something that I find empowering, and I'm passionate about that.
I think it's a lovely way to wrap it up. Thanks very much
enjoyed
for
it,
dropping in and telling your story, because I do think a lot of people will be inspired from it, and there's just so much there that I think people will take away from it in a positive way, and I think you should as well. Maybe sometimes we don't self-reflect on stuff enough.
Yeah, you said it, yeah.
So I think maybe for you sometimes it can be a bit of an eye-opener in that regard too.
Yeah, happy days. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, pleasure. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and if you're listening on podcast, do the usual, give us a 5-star review, and don't forget to follow us. Yeah, you can check David out. I think it's at David Gillick
at David Gillick, Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, all that.
And check out the competition as well. We might have some other ones coming up. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Cheers.